I'm really excited to be here talking about the imminent smart device mutiny, a topic very close to a lot of our hearts. And I think where we are going, it's going to be probably even more closer to our hearts and our lives. And before I introduce the panelists and all of you who are going to join us today, I'm going to say a couple of things. Number one, there are loads of survey questions, so please do take part. We give you about a 2-minute per survey questions. And yes, if you can't dial in, most of you have not dialed in, obviously, but you're on the internet, do ask questions and take part via the questions and make this as interactive as possible. What I normally do is, before carrying on with the main debate or the topic, I present alternative titles, and the alternative titles is just a way of myself presenting some of the alternative titles, basically, to this webinar, some of the thought process that went in to come up with the main titles. So the first one is, no, this is not another boring smart device webinar. You know, we are not going to talk about brand, that any smart device brand that you should buy. We're not going to talk about any brand bashing, although you know you shouldn't be buying that particular brand. You know, I'm not going to talk about which one. We're not going to talk about mobiles are bad or good, and we're not going to talk about GPS settings on mobiles. No, this is not one of those boring webinars. Another alternative title that came up was, because you can see on your screen, with the government encouraging all citizens to use smart devices so they could, track us or intercept our communications and our lives and keep a tab on what we're doing. So I think folks in the government, if you're listening in, I'm sure you're really happy that the whole planet is using everything smart and connected and vulnerable, rather. So maybe we should have had another title saying smart and vulnerable devices. But that's one of the other titles that came up when we were designing this particular presentation. And then we go on to the main topic of who is going to join us. Obviously, on the left is myself. I'm a practicing CISO, also founder of Cyber Management Alliance, and give one day and wisdom of crowds. I'm really happy to be joined by Peter Bassill, or Pete as I call him. He's obviously a lot of experience in being a CISO, and he's my go-to guy on very, very in-depth technical topics, but he's also the CEO of Hedgehog Security. Pete, welcome. I'll give you a second, and you want to talk a bit about yourself very briefly?
Do I have to? Hello, everyone. Pete Bassill from Hedgehog Security. I'm one of those technical CISOs, and I'm a security researcher for my sins. And this topic is pretty close to my heart. I do love a good smart device, and I've got some really, really cool uses for them when you combine them all into more of a homogenized environment to make your life simpler. That's all I'm going to say for the moment.
Yeah, and he's not going to tell you what he does with the smart devices when he's free.
You promised me you wouldn't say anything.
And I have Chris Payne, another good friend, and also CEO and founder of Advanced Cyber Solutions. He loves GDPR. When he's sleeping, he talks about G and D and P and R. And Chris, welcome. Introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. Yep, it is becoming a bit of a problem for me. My name's Chris Payne. I'm the CEO of an IT security solutions and consulting company called Advanced Cyber Solutions, on the slide now. And I have spent a good maybe 10 years of my life working in information security specifically, and before that, amongst other types of solutions. And that has obviously led me to GDPR. Where else would it go?
Excellent. So, folks, everyone listening in, please, this is an interactive webinar. We're not going to bore you to death with PowerPoint. That's the only medium right now, but we want you to join in. We want you to ask questions. I may interrupt the presenters only to ask a question from the audience. Otherwise, we will carry on. There are several questions, survey questions that we have designed for you. So please do take part so we can get a feel of everyone's viewpoint. And obviously, we'll be talking about each of the survey questions. So remember, do join in. Now, the first thing I wanted to talk about actually is, well, there are two things here, but the first one I want to refer to is the story about, coming up now. Yes, it's the story about the Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, from Facebook, Elon Musk from Tesla, understanding about AI threat. They were discussing, Elon says AI threat, is limited, and Mark Zuckerberg saying AI may take over the world, I think, if I may summarize that. So I start with Pete. What do you think, sir, first?
It's very Terminator, isn't it? Or Matrix style. So the AI gradually self-learns and self-develops to a point where they realize in order to save humanity, they must destroy humanity. It's an interesting concept. I personally think we are hundreds of years away from AI actually becoming intelligent. At the moment, a lot of the alleged AI is very pseudo-intelligent, so it works within particular realms and particular boundaries. We're starting to see more self-awareness coming into it. I just think it needs to be controlled.
But, okay, and I'm going to be a bit skeptical here. I mean, I guess a lot of cybersecurity folks, like all of us are. But truly, AI is a terminology that is being used maybe as a marketing term also, but surely, as you also indicate, that we are hundreds of years away from Skynet. Are we, or are we actually there? I don't believe we're there, but if anybody else on the audience knows anything, that they want to share, please do. But are we actually there, in your opinion?
No, I don't think we are. I mean, there was an article recently where I don't know whether there's any truth to it, that someone was hypothesizing on Russia developing artificial intelligence into missiles for defense. There is no way in the world that could be classed as artificial intelligence. That's going to be a set of rules and conditions that will allow a missile to be self-guiding. It's not artificial intelligence. There's a lot of hype, and I can see it being the best thing. Coming June next year, June 2018, will probably be when all the marketeers will start on AI again, because GDPR's run out. But that's the cynic in me.
Hey, listen, at the moment, it's GDPR AI. After June, as you say, will probably be something else AI, yeah.
Oh, that'd be great, wouldn't it? An Elizabeth Denham bot. That'd be great. Just going around and, GDPRing everything. That'd be fantastic. I generally agree with what Peter is saying. I do think that as interesting a robotized Putin would be, I think we are off some way in the future from that actually becoming a reality. I think Elon Musk is a very interesting character as well. I live in a country where 60% of all new cars are hybrids and electric. So Elon Musk is a little bit of a god figure here. But Elon Musk's an interesting character. He also believes in something called the simulation theory, which I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but he believes that the universe that we live in today is just a simulation being run by robots or another civilization somewhere else. And he spends a lot of money trying to prove this. Obviously, it's completely unprovable, even if it was true. Not to mention that it's completely out there. But I think that Elon Musk, he lives and breathes a business which has to talk about the future, because he is representative of the automobile future. And he has to big that up. He has to talk about it. So I think that, there's maybe a little bit of sensationalism here, but I agree with Peter. It's far too off in the future to worry about it now.
but Elon is actually dismissing, although Elon being a futurist, if I may also, but he is actually dismissing Mark's comments, about AI being a major threat. So he's playing it down rather than actually saying his cars may become self-aware, which is really interesting.
Well, what he's playing down is, I think Elon Musk was talking about AI being a bigger threat to the world than North Korea is currently. He tweeted that over the weekend, and Mark Zuckerberg, in response, has suggested that that's crazy. Not my opinions. To which Elon Musk has said, well, Mark Zuckerberg's capacity to talk about AI is limited anyway. He doesn't know enough about it to be able to comment on the topic. And of course, there's been some interesting topics around Facebook and AI recently as well, which I think you're going to talk about, Amar.
Yeah, we're actually going to talk about a fake news story, Pete. But before we go off this topic of here, what is machine learning? It is happening today, Pete. What's your experience in that, in machine learning? Or any comments on that?
There is machine learning, but again, it's within very constrained parameters. A good example is my greenhouse at home. I could quite happily say, yes, my greenhouse has an element of machine learning. It does record humidity, temperature, sunlight duration, and then it will predict the optimum time in which to open the vents so that my tomatoes grow the best. It keeps that going, and it has a future-looking calendar. So it has a kind of machine learning. It's certainly not got any aspect of intelligence to it.
And I think, that's really key here, because I think machine learning is currently happening with limited constraint, but it's definitely not AI. So I wanted to open up the audience, one of the first survey questions, before we go on to a fake news story, which when I first read it, I think Chris was on the phone when I first read it a few weeks ago, and I called it utter BS. So the first question open to the audience is, what is your definition of a smart device? And we are going to mix smart device and connected devices very soon. To me, they're almost all the same. But so we've got a couple of options: a device which can think for itself, a device which automates time-consuming tasks, a device with loads of cool features, a device always connected to the internet, or all of the above. So open this to the audience. You got about 2 minutes. Please do take part, folks. A device which can think for itself, a device which automates consuming tasks, a device with cool features and connected to the internet. What is your definition of a smart device? Pete, what is your definition of a smart device?
I would say, a smart device to me is a device that has an extensible API that I can manipulate to my will.
Excellent. I love that answer. Mr. Payne, what is your definition of a smart device?
It's a tough one, really, isn't it? I was thinking of examples in my mind just before you asked the question. I think my definition would be any device that has capabilities outside of its traditional use. So, for example, a telephone, which then has the capability to access the internet, or a phone, or a watch that can then count your steps per day, for example. Something that just extends its traditional capabilities. We've seen things like talking dolls and doorbells that can send you CCTV images, things like that. Those are smart devices for me.
Apart from the survey question, I think, which I would choose all of the above. But for me, a smart device, I'm going to kind of add on to what Pete was saying, was something that I can control and command, if I may, to do what I want in an automated or semi-automated fashion. To me, that's possibly smart, and maybe in the future. Right now already my phone is preempting me, and I think Apple, I said no brand bashing, but I use Apple. Apple is already trying to work on the phone trying to think ahead of you. And as soon as I go somewhere else, Pete, if I travel, after 1 hour, it says, "Do you want to go home?" So it's trying to be a bit of a smart, device, which is a bit irritating, but sometimes it's a bit helpful because you just say yes, and it opens up the map and brings your driving directions back home. So, in fact, is that a bit intrusive? What do you guys think? What do you think?
It's interesting actually, because only very recently I learned that the Apple iPhone, and again to mention, not referring to specific brands, it's just it may also be available on Android, I'm just not sure. But I was receiving a phone call and I didn't have that phone number in my phone book, but the device had looked through my emails at people's signatures and had said it's a suggestion that we believe it's coming from this person. It was in fact correct. So that kind of smart capability is very useful, possibly a bit intrusive, not for negative reasons, but you just wonder what are its other capabilities.
Pete, do you think those features are helpful?
Yeah, I do. I genuinely do. I mean,
yeah.
I got to a point where I was getting bored of having to set the alarm system in the office.
Yeah.
So I modified the alarm system so that it auto sets every time that we leave. And that's just using certain features off of our alleged smartphones.
Yeah. No, totally. Okay. So we're getting some good responses. I'm going to stop voting now on this question, and I'm going to share you got a few more seconds, folks. Do get in your answers. What is your definition of a smart device? 3, 2, 1. Okay, so we have 11. This is really interesting, Pete and Chris and everybody else listening in. We have a really interesting split. And 35% of the folks who selected the answers, who took part, say a device that automates time-consuming tasks is a smart device. That is interesting. And no one selected a device with loads of cool features. That is really interesting. A device which can think of itself came in at 11%, and a device that connects to the internet came in at 23%. So the majority of folks saying a device, as I think we've all just discussing, that automates time-consuming tasks. Okay. I'm going to open up the next survey question, folks, so do take part. Is it time for the IoT industry to feel the cold hand of good old regulation? Chris Payne had watered down some of my answers, so I'm not going to say anything to that, but I'll say what the answers were. So is it time for the IoT industry to feel the cold hand of regulation? Yes, in the future. Yes, today. No, never. Regulation is bad, or I don't know. So, folks, do take part in the survey questions. There are loads of them. We want to keep this interactive. Pete, what do you think? Is it time for the industry to be regulated?
Is there any point? Well, I believe, I personally believe there should be some regulation, especially around where devices are being used in the children's areas. And there should be a minimum level of security. But, you only have to look at PCI. That was a regulation that was supposed to come in a very long time ago, and still people don't follow it. Is regulation really the way forward? Or with the modern world now, should we be looking at a different way of controlling things other than a bunch of pointless words put on some paper and thrown at people saying you must do this?
Chris, what do you think, buddy? I've got my opinion. You first.
Yeah, no, I do agree. I mean, I'm probably a bit more pro-regulation in this space than Pete is, but I do agree that whatever regulation that is needs to be more flexible than the fails of the past, PCI is a great example of just checkbox compliance doesn't necessarily work, and it's hard to tell somebody that they've done something wrong in the face of PCI when they've checked all the boxes, but they just haven't applied it properly. So I think that the industry does need some regulation. We have seen, and again, Pete mentioned in the case of things like toys, anything that interacts with children, people being able to take control of them. I think we saw the baby cams that were used on babies' cots and beds that were able to be, people were screaming at children through them because they had microphones and speakers in them. So those types of things do give us examples to encourage regulation, but it needs to be flexible, really.
My issue, folks, I'm being, again, my honest opinion on this is, the problem I think is that governments or the folks who write a lot of legislation are living in what I call cyber dinosaur age, right? They have no clue how technology works. They don't understand anything that we are discussing today. They are going to go, let's regulate all of this. Let's put in some backdoors as they're trying to, and everything will be hunky-dory. And that's my issue. I think, yes, if I will just give a simple answer, I think some kind of regulation is required. But I think my biggest headache, and I think this may be an ongoing headache until several decades maybe, is the people who are writing the regulations are clueless. And that, to me, is more worrying than actually the fact that, self-regulation, I don't know if it's ever possible to a certain extent, because, Pete, check this out, right? I walked into I'm not going to take the name of the shop, but a shop that sells electronic stuff, such as televisions and all, and I asked for a television that is dumb, stupid television. And the guy started laughing at me, and he said, "Mr. Singh, I'm sorry, you cannot get a 50 or 60-inch dumb television at this store," right? Okay. The only one you can get is one of those ones you put in the kitchen, 20-inch one. So if you can't get anything dumb anymore, and if nothing is regulated, and none of the manufacturers are actually bothered about making security as the building blocks, and regulators are clueless, what do we do?
Well, there is another option, Amar. Consumer regulation. Mm-hmm. So imagine if there was let's take fitness devices, because I've been doing a lot of work on fitness devices. So say there was a fitness device manufacturer that started publicizing theirs was the safest and securest, and it was unhackable, and they backed it up by actually publishing good quality data. So they've had independent testing done. Okay. Now, if you're going to the gym and you want a fitness device, which one would you likely buy? Now, if the consumers got smart and started buying only the secure devices, it would be a lot more effective. So consumer regulation, it's the way forward. Will it work? No, it won't, because consumers will always buy the cheapest, or the one that looks the snazziest, or the one that's got the largest marketing budget. But, there's a potential for that to be a way forward.
And my issue, and just going back to that, you make a really good point, buddy, is the consumers are also partly responsible, because as consumers, we are always asking for the latest, greatest, coolest, give me a few more adjectives, gadget, right? That basically does everything for me at $1 for the piece of equipment, and that's not really helping, because the manufacturers are. When I do training and presentations, Pete, one of the questions I ask is, in fact, actually everybody listening in, how many of you have updated your fridge or your television in the last few months? And what surprises me is, out of maybe 50 people attending the presentation, maybe 2 or 3 would put up their hands, and the rest of them would never have thought about it. And that is the headache. The consumers are not really bothered about even updating one of their smart televisions that has a vulnerability that needs to be patched.
And sometimes not even knowledgeable to know that they should. I mean, I've got. I think there's a couple of phones in this house, a couple of laptops. I've got a smart watch, and all these things have at least one update, maybe every 2 to 3 weeks. Some people out there are not even aware of the fact they need to update these devices, or the fact that there's updates coming out for them that frequently.
And I mean, consumers are also to blame. Well, everyone really is to blame in a way. I was talking with one of my scouts' parents, and she asked how. Well, she was on a rant about the government should get rid of pornography off the internet, and I just said, well, why haven't you applied the filters on your broadband router? So, well, how do you do that? Huge, a number of sessions with a lot of parents going over how to configure your broadband routers. But the trouble at the moment is, I mean, I'm saying consumer regulation would be a really good way of altering the way the industry operates. But then we've also got consumers that are very ignorant of actually how to use their technology in the first place.
Exactly. Okay, we've got an interesting point by a member of the audience. He or she has not given the name, but why does the panel oppose regulation so much? And the bigger point is, he or she makes is there any point into regulation, ? Of course there is. We all complain bitterly about how our data is being used, but don't want regulation. All litigation is by nature a bit abrasive. GDPR seems broad brush, relying on consumer. Self-regulation rarely leads to success and does nothing to avoid potential cyber threats. Relying on consumer regulation is posing a question too far, too big, and uncontrolled audience. Okay, my opinion on this is I don't think we are opposing regulation as much as we maybe that we're coming across. My issue personally is regulation is okay. How do you enforce it? And the people who are, posing these regulations and drafting them really need to understand what they're doing. Pete, very quickly, why are we opposing regulation?
I don't oppose regulation. I just think it's very poorly implemented, and the bodies that are being regulated don't care, so they ignore it.
Okay, yeah, Chris, opposing regulation?
No, not at all. I mean, I work on GDPR almost every day, so it's my bread and butter. I need it really, to be honest with you. So I'm quite pro-regulation in that sense. But I think that regulation is about shifting the responsibility quite often back to the manufacturer or whoever's selling the device, and I think that's important because otherwise it's about features and selling and not really a focus on what happens afterwards.
Excellent. So a quick take back on the surveys. I'm going to stop voting. 3, 2, 1. Okay, collectively in the future and today we have 84% of the audience saying that yes, regulation must be enforced. So that is pretty amazing feedback actually, and only a very small percentage say no, never. 11% say regulation is bad. That's really interesting. Okay, folks, next question. Please do take part. And remember, do give us feedback also. So next question. Is the reliance on IoT and smart devices humanity's Achilles heel? As in, are we going down a wheelbarrow, slippery road, blah, blah, blah? So we're going to say start voting now. Is the reliance on the IoT and smart devices humanity's Achilles heel? The two choices are yes, and Skynet will take over. For those who haven't seen Terminator, please go and see that now. No, the other option is no, IoT flaws are overhyped. So, audience, please do take part. This is your webinar, and we're just kind of speaking and take it. So, are we going to go down a very slippery slope? Pete, what do you think?
We already have.
We already have.
I will caveat this with this is my opinion, and no one else's. I think technology is killing our younger people. Not killing them as in ending life, but you take a group of youngsters and from 20 years ago and say go make a den in the woods, and off they'll go. They'll go make it down in the woods, have a laugh, have a wonderful time. You do it now, they'll just be like, yeah, let me just boot Minecraft up.
Yeah.
Technology has taken over, and the virtual world has become the environment in which people live in now, and it's much to the detriment of basic fundamental skills. The number of people I know now that don't know how to cook a meal properly is phenomenal.
Yes.
And I blame technology.
But what do you think, Mr. Payne, before I share what my kids are doing? Go on.
Well, I think that obviously Skynet's a bit of an extreme, but I do agree, and I do think that it is a slippery slope. I mean, I think I remember on a movie not too long ago, somebody having an automated spaghetti fork, and it spun around when you pressed a button. And it just makes you wonder where things are going. Really, there's people out there now buying plastic lawns so they don't have to mow them anymore. They always look perfect. It kind of makes me wonder, what is out there that's not. Where does laziness end? Where does it stop? Where do we get to the point where we decide, well, actually, we don't need this much technology in our life?
Yeah, my worry is I think we are down a slippery slope. I have two kids, and I'm kind of seeing the effect of technology on the way to teenagers. I think the problem is technology automation may end up creating a very interesting social, economic change in the very near future, where as businesses are constantly striving for efficiencies, blah, 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 automation, a lot of jobs may, this is I'm not saying anything at all, but I was walking out of an airport and someone was standing there with an iPad, a tablet, if I may, a tablet device, asking if you wanted to book a train ticket to central London. And I thought to myself, surely you could just leave the iPad there on a big screen and everyone could do it themselves. And that's what made me think about the fact that it's technology, and the only reason that individual was standing there is maybe to ask one or two questions, which sooner or later, the iPad or the smart device could have as FAQ. So my bigger worry is maybe not yet Skynet, as we've earlier discussed. We are probably several decades or hopefully 100 or 200 years away. But my worry is about actually the job market, the social economic impact on jobs that is going to impact the younger generations that are coming up, where they may be replaced or they may really never need to use their brains, as Pete was also just saying. They may never need to use their brains, which may make them completely irrelevant in the future job market. We got some questions coming in. Okay. Nick, thank you, Nick, for taking part. Although I voted yes, we have to consider how much the digital world has progressed in the last 30 years is driven by humanity. Yes, I agree. There's a good chance that the negative impact will be addressed over the next 30 years. I totally agree. And I love automation. I think, Pete, Chris, I hope you agree. My biggest issue with a lot of organizations that I see, they're not using enough automation to help their workforce. So I think automation should be used more, and hopefully humanity can keep this on a positive note. On a longer term, I am worried a little bit about some kind of a Skynet, but that's much longer term. So I'm going to give you some feedback from the audience. Everyone do take part, please. Okay. This is really interesting, Pete and Chris and everybody else. We have a 52% of the audience saying that Skynet may take over, and yes, our reliance is too much on technology. And the 47% think that no IoT flaws are overhyped, as in no, we are not down a slippery slope. That's very interesting. Okay, I'm going to stop voting. 3, 2, 1. And I have one more point from Nick. Okay, Nick, thank you. I think it's tough to consider consumers are to blame for not being tech savvy. That was the regulation issue. The issue that needs to be addressed is how to bring these devices to a position where they are more accessible to the general public. Yes, interesting balance. Thank you for that, Nick. Okay, another question for the audience and for the panels, which is back to the list. Do IoT devices enable a healthy lifestyle? Do IoT devices or smart devices enable a healthy lifestyle? Chris, what do you think? Yes or no?
Well, yeah, I think they can, depending on what they are. I owned a Fitbit for a long time, and it became almost a bit of a game to make sure I got my step counter up to the right level. Now I don't have that device anymore. I'm probably sit down a lot more than I used to. So I think in the right conditions with the right devices, absolutely.
Pete, you mentioned you've been working and trying to hack some devices. What are your thoughts? Pete, are you there?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
No, that's fine.
Yeah,
yep.
it will help enable a more healthy lifestyle if used correctly. But it's like everything. If it's used incorrectly, it can promote a unhealthy lifestyle. I mean, what do you use your smart device to monitor your step count so that you're getting enough exercise every day, or do you use your smart device to watch whichever streaming service you want? So all you do is sit on your bum and watch movies all day. They could be used for both things. It really is down to the person.
You mentioned something here, and I think I'm going to go back very briefly on the point of regulation also. I'm not going to take the name of the brand, but apparently there's a brand, a vacuum cleaner that basically runs around your house automatically, and that manufacturer is already or considering to map out your house and sell or share that information with other people. Now, that's where I think regulation is really critical, number one, and I think GDPR may address some of that. But on the health point, that kind of a vacuum cleaner is possibly going to kill a lot of healthy vacuum cleaning activities, which do burn off some calories. So that's some food for thought. I personally think, sorry, go on. I was
going to say the other example for that, the even more obvious example, is the rise in video game sports stars. So a lot of the large Formula One teams and the large football teams, particularly in the UK, they actually now have their own video game teams who wear the same kits and they go to competitions and they play online. I mean, that's the perfect example of that. Not running around a field kicking a ball, instead doing it with your thumbs on a controller.
Hey, listen, I had to take my son to one of those games. So trust me, I know it was an FPG game, a first-person shooter game, and I know exactly what you're talking about. and Pete, I'm sure you also know what I'm talking about, but the whole hall, the whole large hall was full, literally full to the brim. So I'm not sure if it was a healthy lifestyle.
It really doesn't surprise me. I mean, I see it a lot. I mean, my sport is motorsport, and I'm seeing more and more of virtual motor racing teams starting to actually take the foot into the physical world and starting to learn the actual art of racing a car around a circuit. And it's quite surprising how many of them that I speak to have said how different it actually is.
Yeah.
But it's nice to see them actually getting out there. I think it's a much more healthier thing.
Excellent. Okay, so quick one. 75 plus 10, 85% of the audience thinks that IoT devices do enable some kind of a healthy lifestyle. Next question. This is really interesting, folks. Get involved. Can you live off the grid today? Is it even possible? Please start voting. Can you live off the grid today? Is it even possible? Mr. Bassill, if you can, I think, yes, I think you can.
I know many people. I know many people that do, and I communicate with them by putting pen to paper and putting it in one of those red boxes. It magically whips the paper away. But yeah, you can, absolutely. Living off the grid is difficult. It's It takes a lot of dedication and a lot of time, but it is perfectly possible.
But Pete, stop. I need internet connectivity when I'm off the grid.
No, you do not.
Come on. Internet connectivity is a basic human right, buddy. Come on.
No, it's not.
All right. Chris, what do you think?
I mean,
you want to live off the grid? Go on. Mm-hmm. No, Pete, go on.
Well, you said something interesting. You need internet connectivity. But you don't. You need oxygen, and you need food, and you need water. That's all you actually need.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, kind of. I don't know. What do you think, Chris?
It's a perceived right, isn't it? It's something we think we need, but we don't actually. But I was very fortunate a couple of years ago to go on safari in Tanzania, and we stayed in a lodge where there was no mobile phone signal, and the electricity was run on generator. So I think it stopped at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I should say, and didn't come back on until I think 9 o'clock the next morning. So it was the first time in my life that, I don't know if you've ever had a phone with no signal. It's completely useless. But it was an experience that I'd never had before. You know, when it got dark, when it was nighttime, it was pitch black. There was no lights, nothing. And for the first maybe day, it was quite difficult. But after that, it was fantastic. In fact, I would say it was probably better than being connected.
Yeah, I think Pete, you do some training in how to live off the grid, right?
Yeah, I do some stuff around primitive living, yeah. And it's great. I mean, we do it with disadvantaged children and mentally handicapped children, and it's wonderful getting them out. Day one is always a challenge because they're just looking for their phones, but by day 3 and day 4, they're completely different people, and they're just loving not being tied to technology and this green space.
I think we need to run that for everybody, including, well, maybe not myself, I don't know, but
well,
it's
it's now part of the curriculum of some Scandinavian schools.
Ah, that's interesting. Yeah. I mean, I've lived off the grid, soldiers, etc. You know, yeah. But I think, I don't know. I think I could if I wanted to right now, but I don't know in the future. Actually, I don't know what the answer is. Could we live off the grid if everything becomes truly connected and everyone's wearing everything connected? Would be interesting. So we're going to look at the audience answers here. Yes, I absolutely can. Only 33% of them could live off the grid. No way this is possible, 27%, and no. So the no's are actually winning over here, 27 and 38. It's more than 50% or close to 60% think, basically cannot live off the grid. Very interesting. Next question. How many smart devices do you own? I'm starting voting. Everyone, do take part. How many smart devices do you own? 0, 1 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 20, 21 to 30. Pete, over 30?
Yeah, well over 30.
Well over 30. Okay, Mr. Payne, how many do you own?
I would more likely be in the 1 to 5. I must admit I do IT as a job, but once I'm not at work anymore, I try to abandon IT a little bit as much as I can, aside from my phone, of course.
Okay, my issue is, I guess right now I probably own 11 to 20, but when I've got to upgrade my fridge, my dryer, my dog, no, not my dog, sorry. Everything's going to be pretty much smart. So, yes, in the next few years, my car's already relatively smart.
I was going to raise that. I was going to raise that same point. We just got a new car for the house, and when we were picking it up, they said to me, "Well, you can download the app and you can control it from the phone." And to be honest with you, it looks great and it's great to show people. It's pretty useless. I mean, I have no need to press the car horn when I'm in the house.
I think Pete would say, "Don't even try using the app." Correct?
No, just don't. Don't. But I think you'd be surprised at how many allegedly smart devices you have when you really start looking.
That's true. What do you mean by that? But not the fridges and all. What else do you mean?
Well, fridges, cookers,
cookers,
cookers, telephones, microwave, TV, DAB radios, you can't.
Yeah.
There's almost a feeling now that if it doesn't come with an app, it's not worth buying.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
It does sometimes feel that the manufacturers have a feeling they have to create an app for it, regardless of how banal it really is.
Very true. Oh, well, anyway, it's just about time when the microwave and the fridge start fighting with each other. Not yet. So the feedback from the audience, I'm going to start voting. Everyone took part here. Very good. We have 61% of the audience have at least between 1 to 5 smart device, and 34% say 6 to 10. Pete, you are the only one with 21 to 30. 3% have. Go on.
I buy them to break them and then report on them. So it's kind of a bit of an unfair comparison, isn't it? Really.
All right. So actually, there's no one. Go on.
It must be a nightmare charging all these devices at the end of the day.
Run out of USB sockets very quick.
There's no one that owns anywhere between 21 to 30 as yet. Okay, so we're going to stop voting. Right, next one. We have a very good session today, folks. Remember to leave us feedback and ask any questions. Next one, are smart devices for fun or do they have real application in the workplace? This is just a simple, quick one. Start voting now. Are smart devices just for fun or do they have real application in the workplace? Folks, simple yes or no. And let's have from the audience a simple yes or no. And panelists, Chris, what do you think?
I think they can have real application in the workplace. It obviously depends on the type of device. I'm struggling to think of any particular examples, but I think you raised the example there of purchasing a rail ticket once you come off an airplane. It makes sense. Have an iPad there, and you can do it nice and quickly. That's a great application of IoT in the workplace.
Pete, what do you think? Smart devices, real application in the workplace?
I actually saw a brilliant one from my wife. So she has a phone, and she purchased for the phone a cover that goes over the phone with a couple of metal plates on it, and she can do a baseline ECG with her phone.
Sorry, come again. She can do what?
She can do a baseline ECG, measuring the cardio output.
Oh, cardio, right.
Wow. That would, I mean, from a medic's point of view, you can do a basic ECG with the devices in your pocket. Now that's really, really cool. I do like that. Cool. We've been playing with it, and she's compared it with one of the big hospital 12-wire ones, and the output is very similar.
Oh wow!
So I mean, doesn't replace proper medical equipment, but for a particular purpose, it's very, very good.
And thinking about it,
Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, I was going to say, thinking about it, actually, you kind of twigged something in my own memory there. We had a big food festival here in town a couple of weeks back, and it can be quite difficult, I think, for temporary storeholders to require anything but cash. And society is becoming ever increasingly cashless. But you can now get these plug-in devices into iPhones and Android devices, which allow you to then accept card payments through the phone, through the 4G connection, and therefore enabling more transactions. So, again, another great example of IoT in the workplace.
Okay, so I think we are all on very much on the same page. 72% of the audience thinks smart devices have application in the workplace. We are down to our last very important two questions. Do you know if your smart device, is on a list of devices that have publicly announced vulnerabilities? This is a really important question I think to myself also. Do you know if your IoT device is on a list of devices with publicly announced vulnerabilities? And for the audience, if you look back on Mirai, Mirai, and the polls are open, and let's go with Pete. What do you think? I mean, you obviously know about vulnerabilities, but what are your thoughts on this? How do consumers keep on top of it?
It's really difficult. I mean, I'm one of the people that puts the vulnerabilities out into the public knowledge. or the public space from those devices. It's really hard for consumers, that one, because it's like you go and buying something. Most purchases are going to be kind of, they're going to be on the spur of the moment almost with smart devices. I don't think there is any time when someone's going to go to purchase something and go, let me just check on a website, see if this has got any known vulnerabilities in it. It's a toughie.
It's a really tough one, isn't it? Because how does a regular, my wife, consumer example, you're right. And maybe this brings up an interesting discussion of shops that sell them, and manufacturers need to have some kind of a, red, green, amber system of what their vulnerability status on their products are. I don't know. Because, as I said, when I do sometimes talk about this topic with a large audience, it's only a very small percentage of people that admit to updating their television that is a smart camera in it. And it's really worrying. And most of them go, oh, I should have thought about it. So, Chris, what do you think? I mean, how do we solve this problem?
It's a tough one, isn't it? And I think the real-world example outside of IT is you sometimes see those recall notices in stores that say that one of the products they sold has been defective and you can return it. But even those don't really get out that far into the public. You'd have to see that poster or see that notice. It's definitely a tough one. I mean, from my perspective, whenever I have a new update for a device, I am, probably because of my occupation, I do click on more details or an explanation to see what has been covered in there. But I don't think the average person would. And certainly in some devices, I don't think we do even check for updates. I mean, I signed up for an internet connection years ago, and somebody came and put a box on the wall, and I haven't touched it since. I mean, it could be vulnerable to anything by now. So it's definitely a tough one.
Yeah. And I think this is really worrying because for those of you who think your smart device is not connected or not smart, when I bought my smart television last year, Pete, it's a really interesting story. I bought it. I didn't connect it to the internet on purpose, and I was on a business trip, and I come back and I see my son watching Netflix, and I go, "Hey, how are you watching Netflix?" So he basically just connected the television himself to the internet. So do think about this, because I think maybe it's a really important question, because how do consumers update their fridge? Fridge has got to do with food. If they're not kept away.
The irony is as well, Amar, is that I've got a smart TV, and sometimes when I'm watching it does prompt me and says, do you want to update? And the answer, quite frankly, is no, I'm watching TV, go away. So when are consumers even going to think to go around to all these devices and try and update them?
The other problem is it's getting now where, and this is a very small subset of devices, but I'm seeing them more often, is you don't even know that it's connected to the internet because it has its own GSM unit built into it.
Wow. Well, there you go. And
so
I don't think
you've got no control over whether it connects or not, because it's just going to connect by itself over its own connection.
Cars in particular. A lot of them come with SIM cards in them now.
Yeah, they do indeed.
Yeah. Well, I think this is, again, as a very important thing. And for those listening in, do share it with people you know. Although on that note, actually don't update your TV when your partner is about to see a famous television series, because
you got told
it'll take a long time.
Sounds like the voice of experience there.
Oh, experience, yes. Only update your television after 12 o'clock or once no one's seeing any television. Okay, interestingly, 83%, and this kind of confirms what we were talking about, 83% have never thought about it. That is really worrying, and kind of reflects what I think we all are seeing ourselves. So last question of the day, and everyone remember to leave feedback for all of us, and keep getting in touch. Is it possible to maintain privacy with the relentless onslaught of smart devices? Is it possible to maintain privacy? The voting has started, folks. Please do take part. Is it possible to maintain privacy with the relentless onslaught of smart devices? No, it's too late. Vendors don't care. Yes, privacy must be by design, as we say in GDPR. Pete, too late
Yeah, too late.
or too late? Interesting.
Well, the thing is, the intrusion into privacy has been around for ages. I mean, how many people have turned off the geotagging in their photos on their smartphones or even on their cameras, and then they post them on Facebook? Privacy has become something that we accept. We have a particular level of privacy, but privacy sort of back from the 70s has gone, really.
Mr. Payne?
Yeah, totally agree. Couldn't agree anymore. But I think I'm going to be an optimist and say that we must start now. There is a certain level of privacy that we can guarantee. It can't be 100%, but it really needs to start soon.
My take on this is I think privacy must be in the building blocks, but unless consumers smarten up and demand privacy, I mean, GDPR is brilliant. We love GDPR, but I think unless consumers, and we've discussed this, and the theme is coming up here, isn't it? Consumers need to demand security and privacy. And unless they make purchasing decisions based on those attributes, I don't think we're ever going to be able to get privacy. So, and vendors are not going to bother. Vendors are going to churn out cheaper stuff, which will possibly even invade more privacy. And especially if they're not in the EU, they may never bother, So,
manufacturers don't care about your privacy because the consumers don't really care about their privacy.
Exactly. The consumers need to smarten up. So, folks, we are running very close to the time, and Right Talk will cut this thing off for the webinar. So, last few seconds for your votes. Please keep them coming in, and I'm going to read them out. 64% as of now say it's too late, vendors don't care, which is interesting. The balance thing we must be in the building blocks, but 64% say it's too late, vendors don't care. So listen, I wanted to thank everybody joining in. Do leave feedback, as I requested, please. Do keep coming back. And I wanted to thank Pete. Pete, thank you for taking your time off, parking your smart car yourself.
A pleasure as always, Amar.
My pleasure, sir. Chris Payne, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you to all the audience. Catch you all again. Have a good day.